Yeah, welcome in, welcome back to another live episode of the Format Podcast. That's right, that's right. Special Thursday night episode today. Still gonna do the Saturday night episode this weekend, but I haven't put out anything for a few days, and since I guess last Saturday's live, so I wanted to come out and give my thoughts on some of the stories that I thought were interesting, and hopefully you think are interesting as well. So let me just give a few minutes, see who comes in the chat, and then we'll go from there. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started here. If you're coming in the chat, make sure you like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Make sure you like the show, and yeah, let's get right to it. So, we got some good topics today. Obviously, today is Thursday, and normally I would be doing a Throwback Thursday episode. And well, it looks like fate kind of decided what the topic of that was going to be, and as you see there, that is going to be our first topic. Legendary Bill Walton, and we'll get to that. But yeah, have some interesting topics here and some thoughts I want to share. So at this point, what I'm going to do is get started. But before we get to those topics, you know what time it is. If you're here on YouTube and you haven't already, please make sure you go ahead, click that like, that subscribe, that notification bell. Make sure you're kept up to date whenever we drop new content on the channel. If you want the audio only version of the podcast, open up your audio podcast platform, hit the search bar, type in The Format Podcast, and we should come right up. If you're enjoying the content, make sure you give us that like, that 5-star review, and drop a comment. All that stuff helps us rise in the algorithm, helps us find more sports fans, helps more sports fans find us. And finally, make sure you write it down, put it in your phone, set an alarm, do whatever you got to do to remember. Saturday nights at 7 p.m. we are live here on the Format Podcast, and we'll give you the opportunity to call in, talk to us, get at me. I love it. I can't wait. All right, just another friendly reminder. If you're here in the chat, please make sure you give us a like. All that stuff helps us, helps YouTube hit the algorithm, helps us push out the show to more people. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to grow here. Make sure you like it and make sure you share it. All right, cool. So yeah, so today's Thursday, and normally I would be doing a standalone Throwback Thursday episode, but I figured I would add it in since I was doing a live show tonight. And so as you can see, the topic here is going to be the one and only Bill Walton. And well, like I said, fate did decide for me what this topic was going to be. So this was actually interesting how this kind of played out because last week I was on Instagram and I'm scrolling through my feed and I got an interesting post and I shared it with some of the guys that I usually, well, my guys that I talk to like every day, and we debate sports and we talk about all that stuff. And so I wanted to share it with you guys because it kind of fit. And this post here has all these guys who are all-time greats who got derailed by injury. And so the question on the top of the post was, which of these would have been the best player if they had stayed healthy? And I'm like, man, that's really tough because you got some serious all-time names there. Obviously, Derrick Rose, Penny Hardaway, Amari Stoudemire, Brandon Roy, Tracy McGrady, Pistol Pete, Grant Hill, Chris Webber, obviously Bill Walton there, and of course Yao Ming. So you look at all these guys, and these are all guys who, I mean, you got some who are Hall of Famers already: McGrady, Grant Hill, C. Webb, Yao Ming, Bill Walton, and of course Pistol Pete. But you wonder if injuries had not really hit those guys, just how far their career could have risen, like what type of trajectory they were on, because a lot of them were on, you know, they were really on rocket ship level trajectories in terms of what they could be. I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember like what Penny Hardaway was when he was young. We saw, what was that, in his, I guess his second season. He and Shaq went to the finals together, 1995. That was crazy. Brandon Roy, Grant Hill. What's up? It's not that serious. Glad to see you, man. Yeah, that is a crazy list, right? It's some serious names on there. And so I shared that list with my guys that I talk sports with, And we were back and forth on it because, to your point, there are some serious names on there. And I could only really get down to two. I couldn't get down to one guy who would have had the best career if they hadn't been injured. I got down to two guys. And the two guys I got down to were, and this is not to kind of hijack the discussion, but the two guys I got down to were Bill Walton and Grant Hill. Bill Walton obviously came from an earlier generation, but Grant Hill was also that dude, man. He was probably the next great guy if he didn't get injured. I mean, this is the guy that could pass it. This is the guy that could score it. This is the guy that could lock down, defend. I mean, lightning first step. The jumper wasn't crazy, but that would have developed in time. And Grant Hill he was so special. He and Jason Kidd were co-rookies of the year when they first came into the league. I mean, Grant Hill was amazing. So if you can remember that, a lot of great names on that list. And so, but Bill Walton, this is actually the subject of Throwback Thursday. So let's get to him. So you saw it on the screen there, and I gave it some thought. And like I said, that I was stuck between Grant Hill and Bill Walton, so I'm not going to decide on one. I think those two would have had the best careers had they not been injured. And so the funny thing about it, when I sent it to my guys, we got into a heated argument because when I said Grant Hill and Bill Walton, one of them told me that he believes that Bill Walton was severely overrated. And I'm like, yo, are you crazy? Do you have any idea how good Bill Walton was at his peak? Like, that dude was insane, right? So we were arguing about this for maybe a couple hours, like on the text chain that we have, right, on the WhatsApp thread. And so it was just back and forth. We were really going at it. So he thought that, and I don't, and we were back and forth. But then less than a week later, the news drops. Bill Walton, aka the Big Red, died at the age of 71 of cancer after a battle with cancer. And it was just crazy that we had just been talking about Bill Walton a few days prior to that, right? So we've heard the sports media all week kind of giving out their tributes to Bill Walton. But here's mine. I'm gonna go ahead and talk about him and discuss a little bit what I see and um, why I think he's so great and why I think he should be the subject of a Throwback Thursday, because I really don't think a lot of people who call themselves basketball fans understand how good this dude was. So before we get into his career, I'm going to tell you my quick Bill Walton story, right? So way back, maybe this is around year 2000, maybe 2001, probably around the year 2000, somewhere right in there. I used to live in New York City, and I worked at the Foot Action. It's probably if it's still there, it's probably a Foot Locker now, but it's right on the corner of 34th Street and 8th Avenue, one block over from Madison Square Garden in Manhattan. And I used to work there. And so Bill Walton came in there, the all-time what if team: Penny, Roy, T-Mac, Bender, Oden. Oh wow. Whew. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, whew. That is a mean all-time what if team. Absolutely. What up, man? Down. Appreciate you popping in. But yeah, so I'm working in the Foot Action there, and Bill Walton was there doing he was doing an autograph signing. And you know how sometimes the stores will have those things. They'll have somebody come in and do an autograph signing, kind of drum up business and all that, right? So Bill Walton's there, and cool dude, right? So after my shift is over, I'm lucky enough I get in line, and Bill Walton is so freaking tall, right? I'm 6 feet tall, and he's almost as tall sitting down as I am standing up, right? So anyway, I'm in the line, and the line goes, and he's signing his stuff, and he's just a real cool dude. He's like smoking and joking with all the people that's in line, et cetera. So not actually smoking and joking is just an expression that we use in the military, just having a good fun, having a good time, and just being silly. And so he's just joking with all the different people coming up, signing autographs and stuff, right? And so my turn comes up, and I'm standing in front of Bill Walton, and he's looking at me, and I'm looking at him, and I just say to him, "Throw it down, big man." And he smiles at me, and he goes, "Throw it down one time." And so, he signed my autograph. But that's my Bill Walton story. Like, he was just so cool. And, after he got done playing, he was broadcasting and all that. He was known for his quirky things that he used to say, and what he was, as a broadcaster. And that was one of the things that I remembered so much. Like, when he would see a big that wasn't doing what he thought a big man should do in terms of getting down to the block and getting busy. For instance, that would be something he would tell Joel Embiid, right? "Throw it down, big man. Throw it down one time." When he sees Joel hanging out and shooting all these long J's and threes and whatnot, or Karl Anthony Towns, right? Get down there and do your work as a big. So that was my Bill Walton story. I was lucky enough to meet him, and I thought that was so cool, man. Because yeah, it's not that serious. It definitely was a cool experience, man. Real nice guy, funny guy, real nice guy. But yeah. So um, that said, and quick side note, I didn't know this until I was doing research for this show. His older brother, Bruce Walton, his older brother's a year older than him. He played for the Dallas Cowboys, so that's that's a pretty damn athletic family. They played basketball together in high school, and then they played basketball together at UCLA. But then the brother kind of really focused on football. He ends up playing for the Cowboys, so very athletic family. So anyway, um, now, when you talk about Bill Walton, I guess the story kind of starts. The main part of the story starts in college, and he's playing for UCLA under the great John Wooden. And I think if you're going to talk about the best college basketball players ever, I remember we had this whole thing with Caitlin Clark earlier this year, talking about who the best college basketball players of all time are. And if you are talking male and female, there's just no question. Clearly, the greatest college basketball player of all time is who? Lou Alcindor, now Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, right? But um, I think there's a very short list and probably no argument if you said that Bill Walton is the second greatest college basketball player of all time. He kind of stepped in and filled that role. I think Lou Alcindor left UCLA in maybe 1969 or 1970, and Bill Walton, I believe, got there in 71. And so they had a run UCLA of like 7 straight national championships. Bill Walton was part of that, and it's crazy. This guy is 3-time National Player of the Year. He's a 2-time national champion, 2-time Final Four most outstanding player. Obviously, Lou Alcindor was a 3-time national champion, 3-time most outstanding player of the Final Four. But Bill Walton was right there. And this is crazy. Between high school and college, Bill Walton had a personal win streak of 142 games won, which is about 5 years long, including the NCAA men's record, which was 88-game winning streak, which is absurd. And not even the great Lou Alcindor, who I just finished telling you is the greatest college basketball player of all time, and he is, not even he was able to have a winning streak like that. So that tells you what Bill Walton was able to do collegiately under the tutelage of the great John Wooden. So, I mean, that tells you how special a college player he was. And his college career ends, he has a record of 86-4, and he averaged 20 points, 16 rebounds, 5.5 assists per game. And if you looked at Bill Walton, like go back and watch the highlights, he was an incredible passer for a big. Obviously, he wasn't running point like Jokic does, because that's just not what bigs did back then. But if you watch him as an interior passer and even an outlet passer, he was just a great passer. And he could shoot the ball. He probably would have been more fit for this era than he was for his own era, which is kind of crazy, right? So anyway, he goes on to be number 1 pick of the Trailblazers, and of course, he's just doing his thing. He's getting busy, and in 1976 they won a championship. But it's not even that they won the championship. And here you see some of his UCLA footage. Quick note: blocks weren't being counted when he was in college, so who knows how many blocks he was getting. But anyway, when he won the championship in 1976, that was the first time the Trailblazers had ever been to the playoffs. And check out the run that he went on, who he went through to get that championship in 76. So in the first round, he beats Artis Gilmore, Hall of Famer, with the Chicago Bulls. Second round, he beats Dan Issel with the Denver Nuggets, Hall of Famer. Third round, he sweeps Kareem Abdul-Jabbar with the Lakers 4-0. Obviously Hall of Famer and top 5 or maybe even top 3, depends on who you are, player of all time. Then in the finals, he beats Dr. J in the Philadelphia 76ers. So Hall of Famer in every single round of the playoffs, he beats them all en route to his championship as the main cog on that team. Bill Walton was freaking incredible when he was young. He was that dude. But the problem was injuries, man. Injuries really, like a lot of bigs, he had a lot of foot problems, lower foot extremities, he was breaking toes, he was damaging his leg, lot of injury issues. What do we got here? Uh-oh, here we go. Add Bill Walton to all the big men I have above Jokic. Okay, we're not gonna make this a referendum on Jokic. Jokic is doing his thing for this era. I've talked about that. We can get to that on another show. But yes, there are a number of big men I have above Jokic. But it's the whole prisoner of the moment thing. And Somebody smart told me that if you're in the NBA media, you have a responsibility to grow the game. I wonder where I heard that from, man down. Anyway, um, let's see. People today try to redefine greatness. True greatness, you know it when you see it. Those who are all-time greats are rarely duplicated. Absolutely, absolutely. Um, but yeah, so back to Bill Walton. Yeah, he was that dude, man. That was a hell of a run that he went on to win that championship as the guy. And he followed that up the next season, winning most valuable player. By the way, the previous season where he beat Kareem and Dr. J to win his championship, he was second in the league in MVP voting behind Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So, I mean, people really don't know how good he was in his prime. But again, injuries pretty much ruined his career. He ends up playing for the San Diego Clippers. That was before they moved to LA and all that. But he ended up playing for them for a few years. And again, he had like an 8-year stretch where he was really getting beat up by injuries and and wasn't really able to take advantage of his God-given abilities and his basketball intelligence to be able to do the things that he should have been able to do, right? Injuries really, really slowed him down. But and this to me really speaks to Bill Walton's greatness is the fact that he he won a championship as the main guy. He obviously was league MVP. He got darn near crippled by injuries, hung around, ends up going to the Boston Celtics, and he wins a championship in 1986. That's a team that most people regard as one of the greatest teams of all time. I have them in my top 5 teams of all time. That team was incredible. I think they were 40-1 at home on the season, and obviously they went on to win the championship. And it's quick note, it's a crying shame that Olajuwon and Ralph Sampson and the Rockets upset the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals, because that was probably going to be one of the best finals matchups that we have ever seen. And obviously, you can't go back and change it, but that would have been a 7-game classic, and I would have loved to see it. But man, that Celtics team in '86 was just out of this world. But anyway, what I was saying about Bill Walton, what impressed me is he went from being the guy, he fought through the injuries, he ends up in Boston, he becomes a sixth man. He's off the bench, first guy off the bench, and wins the Sixth Man of the Year award. So he wasn't just riding along for another chip. He was a legitimate contributor to that team. And so to me, that says a whole lot. The fact that, you know, he was in that position to be that and to do that. And not only that, that shows that he could humble his ego. He understood he wasn't that guy anymore, and he was smart enough, because obviously that was a very cerebral team, not the most athletic, but he understood his role. He played his role as best he could, and he was rewarded for it. So absolutely just a phenomenal player, man. But even beyond all that, this is the thing. After he retired from playing, he became one of the best and most entertaining broadcasters of the game. Whether it was college, he did a lot of Pac-12 stuff, and yeah, no, you're right. It's not that serious. Imagine if Bill Walton had the mentality of players today. I would rather say, imagine if the players of today had Bill Walton's mentality. I think there would be a lot better players. But you know, you got what you got, and I think that the times that you live in and the times that you grow up in greatly affect your mentality and how you see things and how you go about things. And we live in a time that doesn't necessarily breed the type of people and the type of men that it used to. You know what I'm saying? It's the same thing like our parents look at us and say, man, you're weaker. And we look at our kids and say, man, you're weaker. And our grandparents looked at our parents. Each generation, unfortunately, is successively weaker. And that's just because times are not as hard. They're not forced to do the same things and go through the same trials and tribulations. But it is what it is. But yeah, Bill Walton, he became at that point, he retires, he becomes a broadcaster, and he and Steve Snapper Jones were one of the best one of the best crews on the NBA games, and those dudes used to go at it, and they were super entertaining, super entertaining. That's where I got the whole throw it down, big man, throw it down one time thing, because you know that was one of Bill Walton's lines. He used to love that one. And then he was doing Pac-12 stuff, obviously, well, Pac-10 back then, but obviously, you know, being a UCLA guy and a West Coast guy, he was doing a lot of coverage for that. And if you just go on YouTube and you look up Bill Walton and watch some of the videos, some of the times he's on the call, you're like, what is this guy talking about? But he's funny, you know, he's really entertaining, man. And so he always had a great story to tell, whether it's about the great John Wooden or Larry Bird or Maurice Lucas or Dr. J or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, whoever it was, or all his basketball influences or his experiences, or even the Grateful Dead. He was known as a deadhead, a big Grateful Dead guy. So Bill Walton, yeah, he was that guy, man. And obviously, NBA 50 greatest, NBA 75 greatest. He had a son. Well, I think he's got 3 sons and a daughter. One of the sons, Luke Walton, played in the NBA, won a couple championships with the Lakers, ended up being the Lakers head coach, and coincidentally another victim of LeBron, but that's another story. But he, Lakers head coach, and just he I think that you can say with Bill Walton, even though he died at the age of 71, he lived a very full life. And so, that's that. But yeah, I wanted to come on here and for my first segment, just make that my throwback Thursday and talk about the late, great Bill Walton. And yeah, I will go ahead at this point, give a moment of silence. Then I'll open up the phone lines in case anybody wants to call in and say anything about Bill Walton. So let's take a moment of silence here for Bill Walton. Okay, so all right, so I'm gonna go ahead and open up the phone lines here. Only a couple people in the chat, so if you want to call in, you can do that. If not, we will go ahead and move right on to the next topic, which kind of piqued my interest. And we got here about 13 minutes until was that Game 5 of Dallas and Minnesota. So, all right, so let's go ahead and move to the next topic. So this one, I don't even know how I came upon this. I think what happened was I was going through my playlist a few days ago and I was looking for a podcast to listen to. Because I'm always trying to listen to stuff. I'm trying to learn about the podcast business, listen to successful podcasts, hear what they're doing, watch what they're doing. If it's on YouTube, see kind of what they're using to have success and what type of ideas and segments and blah blah blah. Looking for major stories and hear what other people think about it and develop my own thoughts on it. And so I'm going through my podcast playlist and I see a recent episode from Club 520 on the Volume Podcast Network. And Club 520's got Jeff Teague and a couple other guys on there. And they ended up having an interesting discussion that kind of started out as Wake Forest, all-time Wake Forest basketball versus all-time Georgetown basketball. And of course, Jeff Teague is Wake Forest alum. Quick side note, I thought it was funny that they were going down the list of, I guess somebody rated the top Wake Forest players of all time. And I think so they rated Randolph Childress ahead of Jeff Teague, and Jeff Teague was like, "What? Oh, basically like hell nah." And I'm like, Jeff Teague, you crazy, man? Randolph Childress was such a monster at Wake Forest. You must be crazy. I think he forgot how great, even though he went to his school, how great Randolph Childress was at Wake Forest, man. I remember that. That was I want to say the 1995 ACC tournament. 1995 ACC tournament. Yep, when Randolph Childress set the 3-game scoring record. I think he scored about 108 points in those 3 games, and he was just going insane. He was just hitting from everywhere. There was the one where he crossed over Jeff McInnes, made him fall, pointed at him, and then pulled up and hit the 3. I was like, oh my gosh, it's crazy. That's what you get growing up in Big East and ACC territory, right? Watching Georgetown and University of Maryland and all those other great teams, North Carolina and Duke and Villanova and St. John's and all. But anyway, yeah, so Jeff Teague, he was like, he thinks he was better than Randolph Childress. And I'm like, nah. But anyway, so they got into this really interesting discussion, and it was something that I had never even heard brought up before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the clip from it, and then we'll come back and talk about it because it really surprised me and it got me to thinking. So check this out.
Wake Forest better than Georgetown?
I'm taking y'all.
I am.
Y'all started 5 way better than there.
Y'all just don't have an AI though. Y'all don't have an impactful nigga like that. Disrespectful.
Chris Paul just as good as Al Iverson, bro.
Oh,
fuck no.
For real, bro.
Chris Paul is one of the greatest.
Better than Al Iverson.
Chris Paul is one of the greatest point guards to ever bless the court.
His career is better than Allen Iverson.
I ain't rolling, bro. AI.
He ain't more influential than AI. No way.
That matters, though.
No way.
Nobody wants to be like CP3.
Career?
Nobody wants to be like CP3, but
nobody
want to wear
I ain't gonna lie, his J's was fresh as fuck on ESPN Countdown the other day. I don't know what ones
Chris Paul's shoe game has been
we've
been knowing that.
He's a Chico because he got Jordan, but I'm saying Chris Paul could never come. Like, if Chris Paul had a Reebok, we wouldn't look at it like the AI question Reebok. It's a lot that plays into that. The blue toe question is...
the red toe.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying,
even
bro. So
AI at Georgetown in the 11s, in the concourse.
Bro. So
niggas still rock that. It don't match at all, and I'm still fucking with it.
Yeah. Chris Paul is one of the best pure point guards to ever bless the court, for sure. Turn my nigga Tyson Chandler and David West up. Much respect to him.
So whose career was better, though? I think AI was more influential, for sure.
On and off the court, bro.
But as a basketball...
So you hear Jeff Teague apparently is trying to make some weak argument that Chris Paul had a better career than Allen Iverson, and I'm gonna get to that, and I absolutely disagree. To man down Mel, I think Randolph Childress was ahead of his time, but I think the other thing was he had some injuries early in his NBA career. I think he was with Detroit and Portland, if I'm not mistaken, but he had some injuries, and he was never necessarily an elite athlete at the time either. And you had all those crazy point guards at the time in the league, and so he wasn't able, and that was still when you had to play defense, so he couldn't deal with those guys, so he wasn't able to find a spot. But I think he had some success playing for some years overseas. But yeah, Randolph Childress, man, monster. Somebody, if you don't know who he is, go back. His son plays overseas too, Brandon Childress. But anyway, go back, look on YouTube and check it out and watch what Randolph Childress was doing to people. Animal. But anyway, so I was never a huge fan of Allen Iverson, even though, I watched him when I was in high school, and I was in high school in Maryland, and he was right there at Georgetown. So I basically got eyes full of Allen Iverson constantly. Obviously, Big East, got to watch those ESPN Big Mondays, Allen Iverson and Georgetown versus Kerry Kittles and Villanova, or Allen Iverson and Georgetown versus Ray Allen and UConn, or Allen Iverson and Georgetown versus Syracuse and what's my man, that John Wallace. Like, that was an absolutely incredible time in the Big East and in the ACC, man, watching that. I remember Steph Marbury, I want to say like his second or third game, it was in the preseason NIT, and he matched up against Georgetown and Allen Iverson, and that was an incredible match. I think Marbury had 13, and obviously he's a New York guy, so playing in the Garden was nothing new to him. He had just won the city championship the year before in Madison Square Garden. He had like 13 points, and Allen Iverson had 23. So it was great, man, just watching Allen Iverson at Georgetown. He was a freak of nature, and obviously he went on to be even more so in the NBA. But yeah, AI was an absolutely incredible player, and just, you're watching this guy and the stuff that he was doing. I mean, this guy is 5'10", 5'11" max, 165 pounds, and just explosive leaper, one of the fastest players I've ever seen in the open court. Obviously an incredible handle, phenomenal scorer. This is how good the guy was. Kobe Bryant, the late great Kobe Bryant, said, "We're all fortunate that Allen Iverson isn't 6'5". Otherwise, it would have been over for the league. Pack up and goodbye." That was kind of along the lines, I remember Chuck Daly had said when he was coaching Isaiah Thomas. He said, if Isaiah Thomas is 6'5", we might be looking at the best player who ever played. And so, to get that kind of lofty praise from those level of guys is, that tells you what a special player Allen Iverson was. Now, is he the best small guard ever? I tend to, me personally, take Isaiah Thomas over him just by a little bit, but that's a personal thing. But yeah, Allen Iverson, you saw on the clips there what an incredible athlete he was. He's one of the best players ever, obviously. At his size, just the things he could do. I mentioned the speed, the explosiveness, but the way that he could take over. And it wasn't taking over like Steph takes over by bombing away from three, right? Steph will hit the threes and demoralize you that way. But Allen Iverson, again, 5'10", 5'11", 165 pounds soaking wet, he'd go in amongst the trees and he'd finish with punishment. They'll put him on the ground, he'll finish, and he'll get the and one. Like, that guy, his physical toughness was off the charts. Now, I assume a lot of that comes from being an all-state football player in Virginia. Quick side note, he was supposed to go to Notre Dame and play quarterback. Woo-wee. And Randy Moss was supposed to be his wide receiver. So imagine that. But of course, both of those guys got in trouble, so it didn't work out. But I think things worked out for both of those guys just fine, wouldn't you say? Anyway, yeah, the way Allen Iverson could take over and just take the physical punishment that he took was insane, and how he could carry a team, that's what really got to me about Allen Iverson. Yeah, man, yeah, it's not that serious. Imagine Allen Iverson playing in today's league where you can't touch him, nobody could stay in front of him. The fouls that he was getting back then, he would get guys thrown out for flagrant twos today. Man, because I think his highest was about 33 and a half points per game. So that'll probably get him up around 40 in today's game, because he would be a better shooter because he would shoot more threes. And then again, you can't put your hands on him and you can't be physical with him. So who's going to be able to stay in front of him? There's no player with that kind of speed and explosiveness in today's game at the point guard position. There just isn't. So yeah, Allen Iverson in today's game would be bonkers. Where was I? So yeah, this is a guy who he won the MVP. He has, I believe, the 7th highest scoring average ever at about 26 and a half. And Allen Iverson could flat out get it done. And on top of that, he took a marginal team to the NBA Finals. Right now, they built that team around him and his style of play, an outstanding defensive team that could really lock you down. And obviously, they're going to execute in the half court and let him do his thing. Right, Larry Brown, one of the best coaches of all time. Truly believe that. And this is another side note. I believe Larry Brown, at least X's and O's wise, I think he's a better coach than Popovich and than Phil Jackson, because he never had the type of talent that those guys have, but he was able to, he get out coach them. And we saw what he did to the Lakers with Phil Jackson in the finals in 2004. Anyway, yeah, so Allen Iverson took a marginal team to the NBA Finals, and he was able to get a game off the almost invincible Lakers. And so, I mean, that says a lot to me. Now, there you go. It's not that serious. He really needed more help. I'm with you. Who do we know that needs more help all the time? But you know what? In fairness, though, Allen Iverson is a guy that I don't think he wanted more help. I think he loved the way that team was built around him, because, I mean, they call him Bubba Chuck for a reason. He was a Chuck, and I don't think he was looking. He could pass it if he wanted to. I don't think he was looking to do a whole lot of that. He wanted to demoralize you and destroy you by scoring the rock, and he did that as well as just about anybody who ever played. So Chris Paul, the other guy in this discussion, he's different, right? He is very different, and for whatever odd reason, I'm not a huge fan of his either. He's a true point guard, which is odd. Why? Why is that odd? Because I'm a guy that I love a true point guard and a true floor general, and the way a true floor general plays the game. I love the fact that Chris Paul is a guy who he delivers the ball, he runs the offense, he gets everybody where they need to be, and he can do his thing without having to score the rock the way Allen Iverson did. So I understand that. And normally I prefer them the way that Chris Paul plays versus the way Allen Iverson plays. And he's an all-time great at his position. He is. But he's, what is he, currently 3rd all-time on the assist list. But to me, here's the thing, and this is kind of interesting with a lot of these players now. He's 3rd all-time on the assist list, but it's taken him 19 years to get there. And so I'm like, as great as he is, how much of these numbers are longevity, right? Because we saw, look where Magic was on the assist list, all time, number 1 all time when he retired, and he did that in 12 years. So I'm just like, are these guys that are putting up these numbers today as great as we think, or is a whole lot of that based on longevity? Now, yeah, you have to be great to do it, but I think longevity really plays a role. And anyway, for whatever reason, when it comes to Chris Paul, there's always some reason why things didn't work out with him, whether it's injuries or what. It's just a really weird phenomenon everywhere he's been, whether it was obviously he got to the finals a couple years ago in Phoenix, and Greek Freak and Milwaukee end up beating them. They won the first 2 games, and then Milwaukee wins the next 4. Something was wrong there. When he was in Houston with James Harden, he got hurt. That was another chance, another opportunity to get to the NBA Finals. He got injured and missed Game 7, and of course, Golden State goes on and wins that one. It's just weird. Always something with the Clippers. Just like like, is there a black cat running around Chris Paul or something like that? Like, there's always something going on that keeps him from getting to the place where he needs to be to have that ultimate level of success. And you can tell he wants to win so bad, but for whatever reason, it just isn't happening for him. And I can't figure out exactly why that is. So anyway, here's the thing. If when it comes to the Allen Iverson Chris Paul debate, and this is my thing when it comes to basketball, you got to put two guys, if obviously if they're relatively similar in size and position, against one another. You just, because we can say, oh, this guy got that number, this guy got this number, whatever, look at all the advanced metrics, blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, if you say, all right, put prime Chris Paul versus prime Allen Iverson, who's giving who to work, right? Who's busting who down? I think we know the answer to that, right? CP3 will be like the rest of Allen Iverson's defenders. He becomes a victim. I mean, that's just what it is. And we're not talking, when we say better, we're not talking about the off the court impact on the game or on fans, because we know obviously that Allen Iverson's off court impact culturally is much, much greater than that of Chris Paul, fully aware. But we're just talking about between the lines and who had the better career as a basketball player. I think it's Allen Iverson. That's my opinion. What we got? Yeah, definitely it's not that serious. Prime AI all day. I think Chris Paul would have no chance whatsoever of holding that guy. I think he would get destroyed by prime Allen Iverson. Even though at his best he's a really good defender, Chris Paul that is, but he can deal with Allen Iverson. That dude is a force of nature. So Chris Paul, he's great, right? He's great, but Allen Iverson pretty much changed the point guard position in the modern NBA, right? He made it okay to be a small, high volume scoring guard who doesn't average a great number of assists and really run the offense. He did that to the point that Larry Brown took him off of the point guard duties, put him at shooting guard, and had Eric Snow there running point, because he's like, yo, we got a guy like this who could put the ball in the basket. We got to put him at his natural position. Even though he's too small, you got to put him at shooting guard, and then we'll work on the rest of the defensive rotations and the scheme to be able to help him so that he doesn't get taken advantage of due to his size. Chris Paul is great, but I don't even have the guy in my top 5 point guards all time. I just don't. My top 5 point guards, if you're asking, Magic Johnson, Isaiah Thomas, John Stockton, Jason Kidd, Gary Payton Sr., obviously. Well, Gary Payton Jr., yeah, his son's Gary Payton III. So the glove. And yeah, so obviously quick breakdown on that. I don't think there's any question whatsoever that Magic Johnson is the greatest point guard who ever played. That doesn't need explanation. Isaiah Thomas, I think, was incredible. He could defend. Obviously, he could pass. Obviously, he could score. And he is, he's the first small guard to lead a team to championships, and he led them to back-to-back championships. And the Lakers got extremely lucky that it wasn't a three-peat. Those bad boy Pistons were in the finals 3 straight years. They got extremely lucky. So I think Isaiah Thomas is that dude, second best point guard of all time. John Stockton, third best point guard of all time in my estimation, simply because the numbers are so far and away obscene. Like, nobody's going to catch him. Nobody's going to catch him. The numbers are just that good. They're that far out ahead of everybody. Way out in terms of steals and way out in terms of assists. Just nobody close. Next, Jason Kidd. I think Jason Kidd was almost perfect. He was like a smaller Magic. He could, at his physical prime, he could score the ball a little bit. I think his highest was maybe 15 or 16 points a game, but he was a true distributor. I think he's second on the assist list, if I'm not mistaken. So he was a true distributor. He could really defend. He had good size. He was a really good rebounder at the position. And this is not like what we see from some guys now in terms of, trying to juice the stats for rebounds. He was like a legit tough rebounder, in a crowded paint in a different era, right? So none of this kind of other guys boxing out and moving their guy out of the way so you can get the rebound, so you can get a triple-double. I'm talking about real legitimate triple-doubles when it was real hard to do in a different pace and a different era. So that's why I got Kidd. And Gary Payton, the glove, the reason I have him up there is because he could score, he could pass, and he was such a lockdown defender, 9-time first-team All-NBA. And if you go back and look, even at the 96 finals, he didn't get to defend Michael Jordan fully, I think, until game 4. And the next 2 games, he really, I'm not going to say he locked him up. Nobody's locking up Mike, but he controlled him and made Mike have a really, really tough time. Gary Payton is probably maybe the 3rd best perimeter defender of all time. So maybe it's Mike and Scotty and then Gary Payton. Like, he was that good. So that's my top 5. So I can't put Chris Paul again ahead of any of those guys on my point guard list. So but back to Allen Iverson versus Chris Paul. I think that even though CP3 played a lot longer, I still don't think he's had the better career. Like, I can't see that. And I know that we love stats, so I'm gonna put the stats up here side by side. And this is just something to take a look at. So we see obviously that Allen Iverson, the far superior scorer, Chris Paul, the better distributor. But really, Allen Iverson, I think, as a rookie, averaged about 7.5 assists per game. So if that was really what he was supposed to be doing and being the point guard and being a traditional point guard and distributor, he could have done that. But again, like I mentioned, Larry Brown moved him to the 2 guard to really take advantage of his insane scoring ability. And if he was in a role where being the distributor was his primary role, he would have been able to do that. But that wasn't his role. Now, on the flip side, if you move Chris Paul to shooting guard and make him the primary scorer and have him carry the offensive load of your team, could he do that? I doubt it. So if Allen Iverson could do what Chris Paul could do, but Chris Paul can't do what Allen Iverson did, how's Chris Paul the better player? See, so this is, to me, this is the simplest way to look at that. So at the end of the day, Jeff Teague, I got to disagree with you, man. I know that's your Wake Forest brother and all that, but Chris Paul has not had a better career, nor is he a better player than Allen Iverson. That's just it. All right. Not much in the chat here, so I'm gonna go ahead and move right on to the next topic. It's gonna be a quick show tonight. That works. But yeah, so let's talk about this one now. This is so I was going through the internet, I was looking up some stuff, blah blah blah. I was on YouTube and I got the notification for what is it, like it was All the Smoke, and they were on after game 3 of the Minnesota Timberwolves series. So at that time, Minnesota was on the brink. They were getting ready to they were 1 game away from being eliminated. They were 1 game away from being eliminated. And so All the Smoke guys, Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson, they were on there. And they had Kevin Garnett on there discussing the Timberwolves. Obviously, he was a Timberwolf for the bulk of his career. And they were talking about that and had him talking about kind of what he saw. And so that's when that interview took a turn that I did not expect at all. I was really surprised. And KG came with something that made me look at things in a way that I had not thought about it all before. So I'm going to play the clip and then we're going to come back and I'm going to talk about it, give my thoughts on it. So yeah, let's do that.
Wolves on the brink of elimination tonight. Couple different storylines. I mean, Cat struggling from the 3-point line, shooting 13%. Anthony Edwards, to me, has looked gassed, only shooting 38% from the field. Luka and Kyrie have taken it to another level. And then the young boy Lively has been really live. Tyson Chandler 2.0. What has jumped out to you about this series?
Man, I don't want to make this long-winded, but I want to go somewhere with y'all for a second. Y'all tap in with me for 2 seconds. Y'all gonna feel it. So, Stack, Matt, you know what I was thinking about as I was watching the Young Wolves? 2 things. I'm gonna make a 2-part. I don't want to stress this, but hear me, feel me. Bro, I'm watching the Young Wolves play hard, and I'm watching them give a solid effort, but it made me think like this. And the Young Wolves ain't never been here before. I mean, their bodies. I mean, their mental. So the Michael Jordan effect is 2 effects. Michael Jordan changed the effect of how you came into training camp. A lot of, if you look at yesteryear's times, a lot of guys used to come into training camp and get in shape during training camp. Mike Jordan effects changed it to where you came into camp in camp ready, and it changed the whole mechanism of the league. So much that coaches, GMs, ownership expected you to come in ready to go. I say the second part to that was that his effect when he left for baseball, he came back and he started playing in the summertime with Antoine Walker, a bunch of young guys that was in my time, And what he was doing was the guys that were just coming off or just didn't make the playoffs or just coming out of the playoffs, he was making them play up to July 1st. And I said, why July 1st? Because that's when the finals went through. The finals went through almost June 18th, June 19th. But Mike Jordan taught all of us to play through July 1st. You know why? Because you want to continue to watch the games and keep that vision in your head of whatever you're chasing. You want to be able to condition your body and condition yourself so that you continue to play throughout these. I bet the Minnesota Timberwolves wasn't conditioned and their bodies are not conditioned to go past May, bro.
So that was a really interesting perspective that we got there from KG. And that's something that I had never even considered in terms of trying to prepare yourself for the grind of a long season. I had never thought about it. So for the most part, especially back in the days, we never really heard about guys working that hard in the off season, right? Where we really started to hear about it more was obviously a guy like Kobe, who was just, so psycho about getting better and being in the best shape he could be in to be the best player he could be. But going back, you didn't really hear it too much. Obviously, the media was kind of different back then, but you didn't really hear too much about those players, only like the really great players. Obviously, you heard about the Magic Johnsons and Isaiah Thomas working out. And of course, Larry Bird. You heard the stories of Larry Bird shooting thousands of jumpers every day during the offseason, just, to be there. Yeah, absolutely. It's not that serious. I had never heard of that before. And now that I think about it, it makes a whole lot of sense, especially the part about playing all the way through July so that you can be mentally and physically ready for the grind. But yeah, we're getting there. But yeah, so we heard the stories about Larry Bird shooting thousands of jump shots per day to be where he should be, and obviously running the hills and back in Indiana and doing all that stuff. And then we heard about the stories Magic tells him, and it's in the books about Magic and all that, about him working out in LA, and then he says, okay, I'm done for the day. And then he thinks, wait a minute, Larry's probably still out there shooting. Okay, I got to shoot some more too, right? So we hear about that, about guys, working their games and working themselves and being in shape and all this, right? And so, but those were the best of the best players. The average players and even the good players, for the most part, we didn't hear about that. Those guys were just, they were just kind of there, and they were enjoying their summers. And then when they would come back in, they would use training camp time to work themselves into shape and get ready. But when we really think about working into the off season and getting yourself ready for the grind of a long season, that's where you start thinking about what KG just said. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. So when it comes to Michael Jordan, we know that he put himself and his team through the paces because of what he was going through trying to beat the Pistons, right? We heard about the Breakfast Club, right? Where he would, 6 o'clock in the morning, he got to be in there. Was that Dallas 16, Minnesota 10? Okay. Where he'd be up early working out. And this is crazy because Michael Jordan is a guy that we know used to be up late night, partying, drinking, smoking, playing cards, what have you, doing all this stuff. But he'd still be in the gym first thing in the morning, and he got Scottie Pippen into that. Quick side note, everyone always, pushes, not everyone, but certain fan bases push this narrative that Scottie Pippen carried Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen made Michael Jordan all this foolishness, when really it's the converse, right? It's that Michael Jordan made Scottie into the player that he would become. And I truly believe Scottie Pippen doesn't have championships if he doesn't play with Michael Jordan. Now, would Michael Jordan have gotten 6 without Scottie? Probably not. But we saw the type of player that he was, and I think it's fair to say that Michael Jordan could win without Scottie. He eventually would have broken through, but Scottie would not have become the player that he became if not for Michael Jordan. But anyway, yeah, so we saw Michael Jordan utilize this and really push his team and push himself to become the greatest that he could be and become the winner that he could be. And it all paid off, but that was the example of going through the fire, right? And we heard KG talking about this, push yourself until July, because in a long season, if you want to win the championship, you got to play into late June, right? And so I never even had considered that before. It makes a lot of sense. But so we hear this story and it makes us think about Jordan and just lets us know again why he's the greatest. Work on your body. Okay. A lot of guys work on their body, but also work on your game. Not a lot of guys actually work on their body and their game. Work on your mental and physical stamina. That's what else Michael Jordan was doing. Prepare yourself to get through the grind. Everything that it takes to get through the grind. Okay. For Michael Jordan and now these young Timberwolves, who it's highly unlikely that they're going to win this series because no team has ever come back in NBA history from 0-3 deficit. But then again, no team had ever come back in MLB history from an 0-3 deficit until the Red Sox came back against the Yankees, right? So theoretically, it could eventually happen, but it's just highly unlikely. Anyway, for these young Timberwolves are going to have to learn all this, right? They're going to have to learn, and they can take lessons from a guy like Kevin Durant, who took lessons from a guy like Michael Jordan, right? And for those guys, and hopefully for Anthony Edwards and the rest of his team, it's not going to be about looking for the easy way. It's not going to be about trying to revamp your roster, or it's not going to be about fire the coach and get a new one, or it's not going to be about trying to link up with other all-time greats, right? We know a guy who has done all of that, okay? But back to the Timberwolves, I never even thought about what KG said and how it might affect these young guys. And I hope, being that he's what do we got there? There you go. The Red Sox. Exactly. So eventually it could happen. Just highly unlikely, right? It hasn't happened yet. I wouldn't put my money on it, but it would be cool to see, just because you always want to witness history, right? Yeah, but so we know that Kevin Garnett is really tight with the Timberwolves organization. So I hope that, however this season ends for the T-Wolves, this young team, that he's able to get with them and impart this wisdom that he got from Michael Jordan and these guys, and share it with this young team, and hopefully they'll be able to ingest it and employ it, and hopefully be able to use it to move forward in the next stage of their careers, because it's not always going to happen early. You got to go through the fire. You have to fail, and you got to fail, and you got to keep pushing until you succeed, right? So this is that genius mindset of Michael Jordan to prepare for the length of a championship season. And for whatever reason, that's something that I had never even considered before. I had never even thought about that. Why I hadn't thought about that, I don't know, but it's definitely an amazing thing. All right. So that's the end of that topic. I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. I'm not even going to open the phone lines up. Obviously, just one in the chat. Appreciate you. And we will go to the last topic, which will pretty much be a short one. And then we'll get out of here and we'll go enjoy this game 5 of the Western Conference Finals. All right. So I don't know if you're like me. If you're like me, you love college football, and I'm thirsty for college football. It's going to be a long summer, but I can't wait for it to happen. So anyway, the opening weekend of college football season has a lot of big games, and one of them obviously is USC versus LSU, and that's going to be in Las Vegas to open up the season. The other big one, obviously, I'm waiting for is Notre Dame at Texas A&M. I think that's going to be huge from College Station. But for the point of this topic, we're going to talk USC versus LSU. So when Lincoln Riley was coaching Oklahoma, there you go. It's not that serious. I feel you, man. College football is a special thing, and I can't wait for it to get back. Now, maybe it's me real quick, but it seems like the offseason is so long and then the season flies by. But it should be very interesting, very different this year. We're going into the first year of that 12-team playoff, so super excited about seeing that. And of course, let me mention this. If you play games and you love college football, for the first time in 10 years, we're going to have a college football video game back. So can't wait for that one either. But anyway, where were we? Yeah, so Lincoln Riley, when he was coaching Oklahoma, and Lincoln Riley is one of the best offensive minds in college football. We've seen him get 1, 2, 3 Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks and a Heisman runner-up in Jalen Hurts, and 3 number 1 overall picks. Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, and now Caleb Williams. So this guy knows exactly what he's doing when it comes to coaching offense in college football. So he was the coach of Oklahoma, and obviously a few years ago it was announced that Oklahoma and Texas would be leaving the Big 12 and moving to the SEC. And at that point, the LSU job opened up, I think, in 2021. And Lincoln Riley was kind of tapped as that guy who was going to be heading to Baton Rouge to take the LSU job. And that was kind of, everyone pretty much thought it was a done deal. However, USC swooped in and they ended up making Lincoln Riley an offer he couldn't refuse. He goes and coaches the Trojans. Now, this is what was interesting, right? All the SEC people, the SEC media, SEC fans and whatnot, they're talking about basically calling him a coward without saying it, but saying he don't want the smoke. He don't want to deal with the SEC. So he ran from it. And I was one of the people, I really defended Lincoln Riley because I think he had 2 houses in Oklahoma, and I think USC bought both of his houses. They gave him a house out there in California. They made him one of the highest paid coaches in college football. They gave him and his family, I think, unlimited use of the private jet. Which conference do I go for? I'm not a conference guy. I am a Notre Dame football guy. So, major independent. So I really don't have a conference. Now I do in some ways kind of like the Big Ten because I love the old school smash mouth football that they play. And I love the fact that they built out the Big Ten even more. Now you add Washington, you add USC, you add Oregon, and you had UCLA. That should be a really good, powerful football conference. So, kind of like that. But yeah, so just where were we? Yeah, so Lincoln Riley was getting drugged. Oh, he's scared. He don't want to smoke. He don't want to go to SEC. But really, USC gave him everything he was looking for. They made him one of the highest paid and gave him all the perks, right? So he's like, man, listen, I'm going out here. I'm going out to Cali, right? And so he goes out there. Caleb Williams goes with him. He gets Caleb a Heisman, blah, blah, blah. Cool. Now, as I mentioned, USC is scheduled to play LSU in the opener in one of the big. Okay, all right, there you go, Big Ten, nice. And so USC is scheduled to play LSU in one of the big opening weekend games. All right, cool. So now this week, the report comes out, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Now, remember I said I was defending Lincoln Riley when they were calling him a coward, saying he didn't want to smoke because he went to the Pac-12 instead of the SEC. But I'm like, okay, well, they gave him everything. They made it real hard for him to say no. Now we find out there's a report that Lincoln Riley has been trying for the past 2 years to get out of this game against LSU. And I'm like, what? What? Are you kidding me? Come on, Lincoln Riley. So there's an article here that I was reading about, and it says why Lincoln Riley failed to bail on LSU USC football showdown. So now here's the thing. This game was scheduled in 2021, and both schools, USC and LSU, are going to make $5 million off of the game. But Lincoln Riley and the Trojans try to back out. I'm like, come on, you're killing me here. All right, so the report says, quote, the biggest game of the opening weekend of college football almost never happened, unquote. Quote, USC tried for nearly 2 years to find a way out of the contract to play LSU in Las Vegas because Trojans coach Lincoln Riley didn't want the game, multiple sources told Saturday Down South, unquote. I'm like, are you like, why are you ducking this game, Lincoln Riley? Like, you have quality players. They have quality players. You're a great offensive mind. Brian Kelly's a very good coach. Do what you got to do. Like, I don't understand it. Why are you doing that? So the report then goes on to say Riley pulled out a lot of stops when he was trying to get out of this game. At one point, Fox Sports even got involved. That didn't help. Okay. They weren't getting out of the game, a source said. Another route Riley took was talking to his agent, who also represents LSU coach Brian Kelly. Riley wanted his agent, Trace Armstrong, to help get Kelly on board with changing things up for that matchup, but that didn't work either. The Trojans were never going to find a way out of this huge contest. So again, the question is, why is Lincoln Riley running and ducking from this matchup? It absolutely is disappointing. It really is. I couldn't believe it when I saw that. I'm like, especially for me, because I was backing you up. I was defending you when I was defending you and backing you up when everyone was getting on you, telling you and saying publicly that you were scared and you didn't want to smoke from the SEC and this, that, and the third. And I'm like, nah, he got a sweeter deal from the Pac-12 and from USC. So why wouldn't he take it? And then the report comes out for this. And I can't believe it. It's really disturbing. And it's going to be very interesting to see. Now, you've had 2 years at USC, Lincoln Riley. If you have a bad season this year, do they keep you with all that money they're paying you? I don't know. I don't know. You're going into the Big Ten, and that's going to be great shot by Anthony Edwards. You're going into the Big Ten. That's going to be a type of football you're not used to. That's going to be a type of weather conditions that most of your players are not used to. What happens if you got to play on the road, at one of these Big Ten schools in November, December, and it's freezing cold? Like, that takes some time to get used to, man. That takes some time to get used to. I don't know if you're built for that. Now, if you're Lincoln Riley, you had to know that move to the Big Ten was coming when you took this job. That wasn't something that just happened, right? Oh my gosh. Yeah, listen, I'm not gonna go as far as to call him a coward, one, because it's unprofessional as a journalist to call somebody names, but we also don't know, what is behind him so desperately trying to get out of playing this game. I really don't know. I got no idea. Like I said, I'm just really, really disappointed in what's being reported here. I just don't get it, man. I just don't get it. It's that's tough, man. But if what's being reported here is the real deal, and I have no reason not to believe the reporter, if that's the case, then Lincoln Riley, they were right about you. And the only way to fix that, yeah, you do say it for me. The only way to fix that is to go out there, take your team, prep them, and put a whipping on LSU. That's the only way to fix it. But still, now everybody knows that you tried to duck this game. But the only way you can even make it remotely even slightly palatable is to go out there and put a whooping on LSU. That's all you can do. So get your guys ready and go out there and compete at the highest level. Disappointing, man. Disappointing. All right. I'm gonna call it there. That's gonna be the show for tonight. For those of you who stopped in, really appreciate you. Make sure you give a like, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel on the way out. If you like the content that you heard, please make sure you share the channel, let other people know about it, and let's get back together Saturday night. Gonna have another live show. Might be me. I might have a guest, but we're gonna do that. We're gonna talk about the main sports topics of the day. So yeah, can't wait to hear from you next time. And what does he say to his players? I really don't know. It's not that serious. I have no idea, man. What do you say? Do it for coach. I got caught out there. Help me out, guys. Hey, man, I appreciate you. It's not that serious. I appreciate you, man. Listen, if you're enjoying the show, and I always see you in here, so I'm grateful for that, man. Make sure you're sharing the show, man. Let your friends and other sports fans know all about it. All right. But yeah, I'll be back with you guys Saturday night, and I'm out. Peace.